The wait is over. Dive into Audible's most anticipated collection, The Best of 2025, featuring top audiobooks, podcasts, and originals across all genres. Our editors have carefully curated this year's must-listens, from brilliant hidden gems to the buzziest new releases. Every title in this collection has earned its spot. This is your go-to for the absolute best in 2025 audio entertainment. Whether you love thrillers, romance, or nonfiction, your next favorite listen awaits. Discover why there's more to imagine when you listen at audible.com/bestoftheyear.
It's in the air.
And now, talking all things Boston Celtics.
What dreams are made of.
The Sports Hub Celtics Show on 98.5 The Sports Hub. Brought to you by Shaw's and Star Market, Delta Dental of Massachusetts, and Corona. Now, Gasper and Murray.
A lot of disappointment about this day, about what this game turned into. But at the end of the day, it's going to be another blowout Celtics win. And the gap year Boston Celtics are starting to put a gap between themselves and the middle of the Eastern Conference. They go into Washington last night and win by 45. Tonight, on the second night of the back-to-back, their fifth game in 7 nights. They continue their offensive onslaught, and they bludgeon the LA Lakers. The final score, Boston 126, LA 105.
Sports Hub Celtics Show. 126-105 win over the Lakers last night for your Boston Celtics. As Granny mentioned, probably not as much juice as a lot of people were expecting when you talk about this Lakers-Celtics matchup. Gabe Vincent, Austin Reeves, not really getting the juices flowing in a way that I think a lot of people thought. Austin Reeves is having a great season. Man. Not exactly box office, despite that. Drew Timme playing 7 minutes last night for the Lakers.
Bronny getting in. Those chants.
Yeah.
Chance for Bronny.
So, look, 5 points for Bronny. Yeah, you're right. What did you make of last night? And more importantly, just the way that the Celtics here have been playing of late here, Chris, because it has been, look, no one played for last night for the Lakers. I understand that. But this recent stretch here for the Boston Celtics has been impressive.
Yeah, I mean, they've won 9 of 11, 4 in a row. They're playing really well. They're up to 14-9 on the year. Some of the underlying stats are super impressive. 5th best point differential in the entire NBA. 3rd in offensive rating, which is also really impressive when you're looking at that. And I like what I've seen recently from Derek White. He looks a lot more like Derek White.
No doubt.
Since, if you go back and look at his numbers since that 2 for 13 performance against Brooklyn in the ensuing 7 games that he has played, he's been really, really good. Shooting 49.5% from the field, 42% from 3. He's looked like Derek White, and I think that's really been the biggest difference for this team. When you look at that, 7 games for the team, 6 games for Derek, but those numbers have made a huge, huge difference. That being said, I still think they're a team with a slim margin for error overall, and I look at last night, and I don't think you can – I think that's an anomaly. Not that they beat the Lakers, but when you go out there and you shoot 53% from 3 and 54% overall from the field, I don't think you can bank on that every night. I think that's kind of a one-off at this point, and I hope that they don't sort of think, oh, okay, we've cracked the code here. We're just going to do what we've done with the teams in the past. Because if you go back to the Utah game when they were 11 for 51 from 3, since that time, the three-point attempts had gone down. They were under 40 three-point attempts per game since that time. They had dialed it back a little bit. And last night it was 45 three-point attempts. So if all of a sudden they're like, hey, Jordan Walsh is definitely going to make all of his threes moving forward, that would be a mistake. But he's been great too. I mean, this whole run has really coincided with him being inserted in the lineup. And the last thing I'll say before you give your thoughts is I have to give a tip of the cap to Joe Mazzulla. I wrote an article that was critical of him in the Globe, and while I still stand by that from the standpoint of in a 7-game series, I feel like he's slow to adapt and adjust. He's done a really good job this year adapting and adjusting with this roster and finding pieces that work and putting it together. One of those pieces being Jordan Walsh and his insertion in the starting lineup. So I think Joe Mazzulla deserves a ton of credit. He's done a really good coaching job.
Now you were comparing him to Mike Vrabel,
yes,
right?
In terms of having a willingness to adapt in the moment and go against your core beliefs if that's what you need to do to win an individual game. That's what the comparison was.
No, and I think that's a fair comparison. I will say when it comes to Missoula, I do give him credit. Though Jordan Walsh is a guy that wasn't even playing, never mind the last 2 years, started this season, wasn't getting minutes for the Boston Celtics. And now it feels like not only do you have someone that has become a legit contributor, but maybe a building block moving forward. I'm not putting him in a
no, but he looks like a legit 3-and-D guy.
that you can actually build around on a minimum contract. Absolutely, no question about it. I think he's been phenomenal for the Celtics. I got to be honest. I did not see this coming from Boston. I thought they were, in terms of their front line, it wasn't going to be good enough. I thought you were going to look at a team that was going to be struggling to be a play-in team. So they are punching way above the weight that I thought that they were going to be right now. And it looks like a team that's clearly put themselves in position here where not only are you going to be a playoff team, but a team that could be dangerous in the Eastern Conference. I'll say the Eastern Conference since Oklahoma City's on pace to lose, 2 games this year? 22-1 or whatever it is right now.
I think it's 23. Is it 23?
It's 22 and 1.
23. Yeah, 22. Sorry, you're right. You're right, McCone. I'm wrong.
But put yourself in a position here where when Jason Tatum comes back, I think you can make a real run at the Eastern Conference. And I did not think that was going to be on the table for this Boston team. So I give them a ton of credit for what they've been able to do the last couple of weeks because they do look like a different team than what we saw at the beginning of the season.
So let's have someone who covers this team. B-Rob, how are they doing this? One, and is it sustainable? Is what we've seen them do in terms of winning 9 of 11 sustainable in your mind?
I think it is. And for the reason that you brought up earlier, Chris, the 3-point shooting numbers are down. Like, they're not relying on that shot as much, and yet they're still having a better offense. They have a better offense this year than last year, which is crazy when you just think about the talent that's gone out the door, as well as Jason Tatum's injury and who the guys are getting big minutes now. But the 3-point shooting is coming back to, like, the mean. Like, Derek White snapped out of his funk. Payton Pritchard's obviously playing much better. Jalen's been pretty much good front to back. But then you're just getting the Jordan Walshes, the Josh Minotts, like they're crashing the offensive glass hard, and they're finding other ways to score and contribute, whether it's like back cuts, et cetera there. And so there's every single night right now, since Jordan Walsh has been in the starting 5, they're finding different ways to be productive. And defenses obviously don't have an answer for it. And I don't know, I guess J.J. Redick, they were expected to win that game right now.
Yeah, can you talk about that a little? Because I do want you to talk about that. What the comments, and I don't know if you want to get into that now or if you have that sound ready. I thought it was really interesting and what J.J. Redick said, because it's kind of the flip side of Joe Mazzulla, and I wasn't there last night, but did Joe say anything like that in terms of shooting as well as they did from 3? The only quote I saw from the Celtics, because I get the quote sheets, was him talking about how they took good open shots. I didn't hear him talk about, the expected percentage of threes is much lower.
Yeah, there was no expected talk from Joe last night. Just
of course not.
Of course, yeah. Their acknowledgement they were hot.
Because they made all the threes.
Right. Yeah. But I do have this clip. I can just play it right now.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
This is J.J. Redick's opening. This is opening question and answer from last night's press conference.
Yeah, the Lakers actually won this game.
JJ, what did you see in that third quarter as you're able to kind of battle back in and at least make it a game going into the fourth?
Yeah, look, expected score, we were down to it at halftime. Expected score, we won by 2. First half, we had the highest paint touch rate we've had in a half, I think, or one of the highest paint touch rates we've had. We've been one of the best non-rim paint 2 teams in the league. We shot 5 for 13 there. They blitzed us from 3 and in that first half, and we outscored them by 1 the last 3 quarters. Unfortunately, that's not how basketball works, and you end up losing the game by 21. So I thought our fight was good. There was a lot of moments when we certainly could have broken, and we didn't. And it's a credit to our guys.
They won. The Lakers actually won the game. Did you know that? In the expected world, the Lakers won the game. Did you hear what he said? They won.
Unbelievable stuff there from J.J. Redick. Yeah. Certainly a little different than, I would say, basketball in the way that we talked about it 10 to 15 years ago, even with J.J. Redick there. That's unbelievable. Unbelievable stuff.
But it is unbelievable. But all kidding aside from J.J. Redick, essentially, if you boil it down to simple, plain speak, he's saying the Celtics got lucky.
Yes.
They can't duplicate that shooting performance. They shot, they shot the lights out and shot out of their ass, and that's not going to happen again. Which I find interesting from the standpoint of, again, the Celtics are very analytically oriented, And I didn't hear anything last night about, hey, this was a great night for us, but we can't rely on this, or we're not going to shoot 50. It was just we took the right shots, we took open shots. That's where I get frustrated. Because if you're going to do the expected thing when you don't make threes, which Joe did last year in the Knicks series, remember? Mm-hmm. He's like, well, it's going to even out. You can't just take the threes when you make them after they blew games 1 and 2. Then when you have a game like this, I need you to say, yes, we took the right shots, we took the open shots, but the expected numbers say we're not going to shoot 53% from 3 and we can't bank on that. But did you hear that?
No.
Why don't you ask that question when you guys have Joe on?
I will mark that down. We'll get that in between.
And
you don't have to ask on television.
You don't have to ask it the way. You don't have to ask it the way I'm.
Oh no, I will. I will say Chris Gasper wanted me to ask this.
No, you don't have to do that because I'm sure. I'm sure I'm
yeah.
not his. I mean, judging by his response in Minnesota to poor Washburn, probably didn't even realize that Joe was responding to my column with all those football references. But the reality is no. But you don't have to ask it that way. But I honestly would like to know what he thinks, because I know he has a relationship with JJ Redick. What he thought of JJ Redick's comments after the game. Basically saying, expected-wise, we won the game, which boils down to, in plain speak, the Celtics had a luck component in how well they shot from 3.
No,
and that's why we lost.
In all seriousness, I will ask him about that coming up this week.
Yeah,
I do think
I'm just curious what he would say.
How he would approach that, for sure. I did want to get both of your thoughts on just the lineup for the Lakers last night. How disappointed were you that we didn't get? Now, obviously, Luka has some other stuff going on as well, but just the fact that you didn't get LeBron James at TD Garden last night. Do you blame the back-to-backs, the schedule, all that stuff? I heard Felger and Maz, you on with Felger and Maz yesterday a little bit. You guys were discussing this as well, Chris.
Yeah, it is disappointing to have both teams coming off back-to-backs. And someone brought up a good point. It was Jimmy Stewart brought up this point. I don't know if it was a discussion on the air or sometimes Jimmy and I talk in the breaks, and he was saying that could be LeBron James's last game in Boston, and he didn't suit up and play. That just kind of stinks for the fans. They don't get to... And I know people around here generally don't like LeBron, but the sports fans in this town do appreciate greatness. And to see him one last time, if that's really what it is, you kind of got robbed of that by the schedule. And that game was a lot. From a Celtics standpoint, I can't lie. I mean, it was fun to watch because they played great and shot really well. But it definitely lost some of its juice. And B-Rob, I know you were in the building. Grandy was saying on the radio call, because I was listening to that the juice in the building was lacking a little because the Lakers were missing Luka and LeBron, and Marcus Smart didn't play either.
Yeah. It was. I thought it was one of the worst crowds of the year. Period. Which is wild to think. Like it felt like a Wednesday night against like the Hornets or something like that. Just in terms of the energy for most of the game, and from that standpoint, like this happened last year too when the Celtics and Lakers played in LA. It was 5 games and 7 nights for the Celtics at the end of on a back-to-back. And it was a terrible game that the Celtics threw in the towel in the middle of the third quarter, despite playing their guy. At least their guys played, as opposed to the Lakers guys last night. But I don't know. I feel like at some point the NBA needs to look at these, like, you can't do this for every matchup, but East-West rivalry stuff, like matchups that's only happened twice a year, like, figure this out. Like, don't have those on a back-to-back. I know you can't do it with all the games. 82 games need to be played, but you have to look at being like, what are the 10, 20 games on the calendar that matter every year, that are fun every year? Yeah. And this is one of them, and they should figure that part of it out and give them the proper space they need for it.
I agree, and just quickly before you comment, McCone, I agree because they for NBC, that Celtics-Knicks game, and the Celtics-Knicks play all the time, they acted like it was like the game of the year.
Right.
They had the Bob Costas intro and all the stuff about the rivalry and all that stuff. They acted like this is like the one game. They literally portrayed the thing like Michael Jordan came out of retirement to play LeBron James. and meanwhile, Celtics and Lakers play twice a year. It is the best historical rivalry in basketball, and it just didn't get what it deserved.
No, I agree with all of that stuff. I also think from a rivalry perspective for younger Celtics fans like myself, the biggest rivalry that the Celtics have had throughout my fandom is with LeBron James. It's not necessarily an individual team as well. I think it's a lot of that whether he's on the Cavs, whether it's the Heat, whether it's going to the Lakers and all that stuff, I just think that to me is sort of it even more than the Lakers. And I understand that you took on Kobe in 08 and in the finals in 2010 as well, but he sort of transcends that as well. So certainly disappointing if this is, and look, if it's a swan song, because he's certainly not the same player he was, it's disappointing that you didn't get to see it. I think the league has done a lot recently to try to juice up the regular season, whether it is the Cup, whether it is the rules in place where you have to hit a certain threshold to be eligible for some of these end of season awards, which I think is the right decision by the NBA to try to avoid some of this stuff. But you have to go a step further now, and like you said, B-Rob, pick out some of these matchups that you should try to build a schedule around. And look, it might sound corny and like you're over dramatic, but as a league, you should be building up Celtics Knicks. You should be building up Celtics Lakers in the regular season and try to get as much juice out of those games as you possibly can, because you swung and missed on this one in a big
Well, you know, and I know we have to take a timeout here, but the thing for the Lakers is they have to rest those guys because, you know, they have one more game here. They have Philadelphia on Sunday, but really they have a huge matchup on Wednesday because they're in the NBA Cup quarterfinals. So you got to make sure everybody's healthy for that NBA Cup game. I mean, you can't risk anybody not being able to play in that, right?
It'd be two out of 3 years, right? That the Lakers won the
right.
Cup?
Two out of 3 years, they would win it. Yeah,
Hang the banner.
You got to make sure everybody's healthy for that thing because it means so much. I mean, everybody knows when you win that means, what does it mean again?
Quick question. Who won it last year? Do you guys know?
The Bucks. I tracked this just so I can needle Felger.
I remember that the Lakers won it the first year. I could not remember for the life
Bucks
of me
won it last
who
year.
won it last year. All right, yeah. It doesn't actually translate, it turns out, to postseason success for some of these teams as well. 617-779-0985. So you guys lined up. I promise we'll get to your phone calls. Plus, speaking of the Bucks, Giannis on the trade market. Could the Celtics be in play? If not, where could he land? We'll talk about it coming up next on the 98.5 The Sports Hub Celtics Show.
We'll have more of the Sports Hub Celtics Show next.
Hi, I'm Sean Flaherty, managing partner at Catches Law Group. At Catches, we're proud to stand up for the people who keep New England moving, the ones who have spent a lifetime working hard, day in and day out. Whether you've been hurt on the job or you're suffering from years of physical wear and tear, we're here for you. You deserve real help from real trial lawyers who understand what you've been through and know how to win. There's no fee unless you win. Visit catcheslaw.com or call today to schedule your free consultation. Catches Law Group, fighting for the workers, fighting for you.
Chris Gasper, Big Jim Murray, the Sports Hub Celtics Show.
Jaylen Brown keeping it away from LaRavia, dribbling low into the paint. Little no look. Jordan Walsh puts it up, bounces in, scoring the foul.
Strength, power, going straight through the defender's arms.
All right, that right there was your drive of the game, brought to you by your New England Chevy dealers and the Chevy Silverado, where dependability comes standard. Tell you what, you talk about Jordan Walsh. He was a kid that was a McDonald's All-American, one and done.
At Arkansas?
Yeah, you saw him in Arkansas. I saw
team
UConn.
that you had terrible spacing.
Got absolutely drilled by UConn on the way to their second straight national championship.
Yes, way to squeeze that in, McCone.
had to shoehorn
that
in.
Good job, McCone.
But he had all the physical tools, and you're just wondering, you know, it's a lottery ticket of a draft pick, and it felt like it wasn't going to work out based on the first 2 years. And honestly, I keep coming back to this. The kid was not playing at the beginning of the season, and all of a sudden he's been inserted, got an opportunity, and he's taken with it, and he's run with it. It's just, I can't say enough good things about Jordan Walsh and what he's been able to do over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it started out as him giving you a defensive presence and just energy. Now he's giving you all of that on top of point production. You know, what he's been able to do here over the last 3 games has been, you know, pretty incredible. When you look at it, he's averaging 15.6 points per game here. He's making basically all of his shots, which is really incredible. He's made 18 of his last 19 shots. That's unreal. And I saw this stat. The Celtics put a stat out here about him, what he's been able to do. He's the first non-center in NBA history to average at least 15 points on 90% shooting over a 3-game span. No non-center has ever done that until Jordan Walsh.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, is that sustainable? I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably not. But still, it does look like you have a player here that now can be a rotational player for you and a piece moving forward, which is all you can ask for when you take a guy like that in the draft. What have you made of it so far, B-Rob?
It's wild because it's not just him. The fact that we came into this season, guys, and we were like, okay, can they get something on the wing from any of these guys coming up? Walsh, Minot, Shireman, Hugo Gonzalez. And guess what? They're all giving you something right now. And some of them are turning into being like, okay, this is a fun little story, to being like, no, this is a potential big building block role player for the future. around when Tam comes back in the fold and Walsh and Minot and potentially Gonzalez there. So the fact that all these guys are getting minutes now, I think, is the best part about this recent stretch right now, because not only do you have Walsh in the starting five, but they're going small off the bench at center with Minot there, and that opens the door for Ugo and Shireman to play too. And so you kind of see the development of all these guys at once, which has been very promising.
I want to go back to something you said earlier because I want to make sure I heard you right. Did you say the Celtics have a higher offensive rating right now than they had last year?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. So,
how about that?
So the Celtics are better with Jaylen Brown as a one than Tatum. That's what you're saying? Or that's what the numbers are saying?
Offensively, the numbers are saying that right now.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard anybody connect those dots and say it like that. That's funny. Huh. Interesting.
617-779-0985.
Sounds like a column for you.
Yeah. No, because it's not true.
Yeah.
I know it's not true, but it's just if it were the other way around, like if Jaylen Brown were out and it was without, they'd be like, oh, the offense is so much better without Jaylen Brown clogging it up. But now that it's Jaylen leading it, and it's all these guys are gone and Tatum's out, and it's not true. We know it's not true. Stats lie. They lie all the time. But no one's connecting those dots and saying that.
No, it's fair. It's fair. Nick in Attleboro wants to talk Jordan Walsh. Nick, what do you got?
Hey, thanks for taking my call, guys. So I've been watching Celtics for a very long time, and Scalabrine, I believe, not a couple of weeks ago, about last year, the year before, made a reference to the Red Claws and how they kind of got Sam Hauser to where he is. Do you know, Gasper, if the Red Claws can be credited for like the production and the development of what we've seen over Jordan Walsh over the last 2 to 3 weeks?
I'll defer to.
Thanks for taking my call as always, guys.
You got it, man. We appreciate the call. B-Rob, I'll defer to you on that. But I feel like the Celtics put a graphic up like a couple of days ago talking about how many of their guys on the roster have G League experience.
Yeah, I mean, Walsh has been. I mean, he's their leading scorer in summer league history. So that kind of just shows you like he's been in the G League for a couple years now. He did 3 summer leagues.
Let me just say, though, that's probably not a good thing.
Exactly. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be in that company.
He's still only 21, though.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it is. It's like the balance of, like, he feels like he's been around a while, but he's still only 21. And so that's the upside when you're able to get a 19-year-old in your system here and figure things out. And the other guy who deserves credit here with Jordan Walsh is Jaylen Brown, because a couple weeks ago when Jordan got the call initially to get in the lineup here, Jaylen Brown apparently went to Joe Mazzulla and said, hey, like, Jordan can help cover some of these guys, take some pressure off of me defensively. And Joe listened to him. And he's obviously taken the ball and run with it since then, as far as his production goes. So but the way that Jordan Walsh has come through the system, Sam Hauser, Luke Cornett, I think, was another big success story. He spent a ton of time in Maine. So the developmental process the Celtics have built over the last few years here is paying dividends and could continue to here, because they're not going to have a lot of money to spend on the free agent market in the years to come. So it's going to be guys like this that get them back to being a contender as far as, replacing the role pieces they lost.
Can I ask I'm going to make a snarky comment and then ask a question. One, it's too bad the development skipped Jordan Mickey, huh? He was like a dominant G League player, but it never.
I had a lot of Jordan Mickey stock, to be honest with you.
It never really worked out. But here's the question, because this is a feel-good time right now for the Celtics, but if you zoom out 30,000-foot view, knowing you have one of the best players in the league and Jason Tatum coming back, and you've seen how well Jaylen Brown is playing, and we like what we're seeing from these role players, but again, 30,000-foot view, what's supposed to be a really, really good 2026 draft, are they hurting themselves here? In other words, would they be better off being closer to like the play-in and having a higher draft pick in this draft and getting a piece that maybe could be in the hierarchy of stars, the third guy, as opposed to what they're doing now, which is Jordan Walsh was a second-round pick. You're kind of taking guys off the scrap heap, and you're developing them and doing a great job. But are you missing out on somebody that could, I don't want to say the D word, dynasty, but someone who could be really, really good and put you in a position to be a favorite for championships for years to come?
That's the approach I was banging the drum for coming into this season. I did not want to see kind of what we've seen right now, which is that they're a 5 seed and being competitive. I thought if you had an opportunity here for a reset year to pick up an asset like a high lottery pick and then come back with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and a young controllable asset that could be an impact player, especially with the way that the second apron and all of that stuff plays a factor. I thought that would be a huge, huge win for the Celtics when it comes to the long term. I then watch a team like Washington, and I'm just not sure how realistic tanking in the NBA with some of the other teams across the rest of the league were going to be if you still have a guy like Jaylen Brown and Derek White playing. And so then if we're talking about a team that's going to be a play-in team or the 8, 9, 10, 10th team in the Eastern Conference, is that pick going to be as impactful as, let's say, a top 5, 6 pick would be?
Not a top 5. Probably. I should say probably not.
So then is it really worth it to me? I mean, that's sort of the way that I think that you have to look at it. So if you're going to go all-out tank and try to get a top 5 pick in this draft, because I'm with you, this draft class looks like it's going to be absolutely absurd, do it. I just don't think there was a path to do it, and now I look at sort of the development that you're taking. I'm okay with the path that they're on right now.
And the fact that I was with Vimako initially, but you entered this year just uncertain. Like, you know which way this is going to go. You certainly had too much talent to be able to go over the dregs of the East and Western Conference right now, where the Wizards are on a one-way trip to the top 3 pick again.
So bad.
Just brutal. But the fact is, this is the better, the learning experience here. You're learning good things this year. You're not a 5 seed with stopgap guys. You're a 5 seed with internal development.
Yeah.
With guys who are going to be here for another couple years. And so to be able to do both of those things at once while also learning, okay, Jaylen Brown is totally up to the task of being a number 1 option and is being a great leader for this team right now and is doing the assist guys with Jaylen Brown. We haven't talked about Jaylen. I mean, we'll have more time this hour, but that the playmaking from him has been phenomenal during this stretch too. So the fact that you're learning good things for the future while during this reset year is, I think this is the preferred path to go.
That's what I got wrong. I just didn't think they were going to have the front court players to be competitive at all.
They don't.
That's the crazy part.
But it's worked out.
Yeah, it's worked
out.
I
mean, Keita's obviously been great, and then Minot as a small ball center has been great.
617-779-0985. See you guys lined up. I promise we'll get to your phone calls on the other side. Plus, we got to get into the Giannis stuff. It's taking over the NBA. We'll do that next year on the Sports Hub Celtics show.
The Sports Hub Celtics show continues after these. We're back to the Sports Hub Celtics show. 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Giannis Antetokounmpo made one thing clear at Media Day before the season. He said, I want to be on a team that allows me and gives me a chance to win a championship. That's a direct quote. And then a few days later, our Shams Charania reported that there was only one team that Giannis desired to play for outside of Milwaukee, and that's the Knicks. But despite engaging in trade talks over the summer, the perceived trade window, it was closed. But one thing was clear to everyone within the organization. The two-time MVP would use the first quarter of the season to take stock in how competitive the Bucks can be. Well, Milwaukee has lost 8 of their last 9 games and are just as close to being last place in the East as they are to being a top 4 seed, which brings us to breaking news as we say hello to our senior insider, Shams Charania. Shams, what is developing here outside of Milwaukee?
Malika, sources tell me that Giannis Antetokounmpo and his agent, Alex Saratas, have started open conversations that are active right now with the Milwaukee Bucks about the realities of whether his future is best staying in Milwaukee or the realities of moving on elsewhere.
About 15 minutes after that report, I thought Giannis went down with an Achilles injury. It winds up being a calf strain. He's out 2 to 4 weeks. But that is certainly the big news across the NBA. Put the Chris Paul drama on the back burner there and everything that's gone wrong with the Clippers. What do you make of the Giannis stuff, Chris? We talk about landing spots. Jimmy Stewart coming out with his report saying that the Celtics would be interested in landing Giannis, putting together a package that wouldn't even have to include Jaylen Brown. I would think that would be the fastest possible way to get fired as a GM if you were going to do that, if you were in Milwaukee. So we'll see how that shakes out. But what do you make of everything that's gone on here over the last, I would say, 72 hours on the Giannis front?
I mean, Giannis requesting a trade and forcing his way out of Milwaukee would have seismic repercussions across the NBA, especially if he landed with a team like the Knicks, and that would have major repercussions for the Celtics. When you look at the Bucks, they've tried a number of ways of making that team viable around him. It just hasn't worked out. They've gone with these quick fix moves like Kyle Kuzma. That hasn't worked. The Damian Lillard thing, those two guys, for whatever reason, can't play well together. I put that more on Dame than I put it on Giannis, because when I watch Lillard play, I see a guy that doesn't want to change his game at all to win and doesn't really want to play any defense. So when you look at it overall, I'm curious what the path is here at this point. And is it something that makes sense for it to happen during the season for Giannis? Or does it make more sense for Milwaukee to try and do it in the offseason? Or is there now fear, based on what you said, with this calf injury, that if we have to trade him and get something for him before he goes down with an injury?
Look, we saw it, by the way, the calf strain is what led to the torn Achilles for Halliburton last year as well. Yeah. I can't believe, look, 10-14 after going in and signing Miles Turner. It's got to be disappointing if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan. Like you said, clearly is not working there. I think about typical landing spots. Certainly Miami would be in the mix, I would think. The Knicks would be a scary option if you're a Celtics fan. We talk about the package that Jimmy Stewart was talking about. I think any Celtics fan would want to do that. Would you give up Jaylen Brown for Giannis if that's what it took? If Milwaukee called and said, we want a package surrounding picks and Jaylen Brown, would you pull the trigger for Giannis?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, look, in a vacuum, Giannis is a better player. But, again, when you're looking at the fact that it hasn't worked with Damian Lillard, and I look at that and think that's, again, more on Dame than it is on Giannis Antetokounmpo. At the same time, I know that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown work together, and it took a little time to get to that. So, and here's the other thing that would give me pause and why I'm leaning towards no, even though I acknowledge Giannis is a better player than Jaylen Brown. Giannis, to me, is a guy who is so reliant on his incredible athleticism. There's a reason people call him the Greek Freak. His athleticism at that size and what he can do is unique and sort of unheard of. He's going to turn 32 in December. How much longer is he going to have that level of athleticism? And when that athleticism declines, what's his game going to look like? Does he look like a guy who can adjust? Not really to me. So I would say no.
B-Rob?
Yeah, if it's Jaylen, that's a yes. But if it's not going to be just Jaylen. They're going to want picks and then other stuff on top of that, and that's where I'm with Chris in terms of drawing the line of being like, okay, do you have enough here to actually get this done? Because you want to, if they're asking for multiple first round picks on top of something like that, that's when it's like, all right, do we have enough left to put together a contending roster? Because with the injury stuff with Giannis, if one of those with him or Tatum doesn't look like you want him to coming off of this injury, then you're kind of back to square one there. So
imagine if they both have like torn Achilles.
Yeah,
I mean, what would that look like? Like you make that deal, and then you're basically the Nets,
right? Ultimately, though, I think the Bucks are not going to go in this direction for the fact of like even like a Jaylen, like what does that do? Are they going to try to stay competitive here, or are they going to try to get some young talent in the door as well as some elite draft picks? Because any package from the Celtics, you're not going to get any good draft picks there, and the same goes for a lot of the teams we're already talking about. But if you can find a team that has the mix of like, I don't know, like the Hawks have that unprotected Pelicans pick for this year, and then some intriguing young talent on that roster.
Yeah, Reece Shea. I don't know if they would move. I mean, the way Jalen Johnson's playing, I don't know if you can move him for like anyone at this point.
I'm thinking like San Antonio, man. Could you get Steph Castle from them or something like that and build around a player like that?
Those guys.
Right. So there's another like
Dylan Harper.
Exactly. Like there's enough teams like that out there that can put together, kind of give the Bucks the best of both worlds, because they don't control their future picks at this point.
Yes.
So they need something here, because tanking doesn't do anything for them unless they get some of their picks back, or unless they get some good other lottery picks that other teams are holding. So that whether they can find that out there midseason here is going to be the question.
Dean's in Shrewsbury. Dean, thanks for holding on.
Hi. I would trade Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Hugo Gonzalez, and picks for Antetokounmpo, Kyle Kuzma, reroute Kyle Kuzma so we get under the cap and can sign someone next year, and Alex Antetokounmpo just to make Giannis happy.
There's a lot of Antetokounmpos that come with this trade, no question. You're not wrong about that, Dean.
Yeah. So and you can get like Derek White. Toronto was offering Barrett in the 9th pick, and then you can reroute that to Milwaukee. And Jaylen, you can probably trade to Houston and reroute Şengün to Milwaukee, I think Houston would be willing to trade Şengün for Jaylen Brown in some sort of machination. P.S. Jordan Mickey never got a fair shake. He would have been the next Hakeem Olajuwon.
Dean, great call.
Appreciate the call as always, Dean. B-Rob, I'll defer to you. I mean, I can't see Şengün. They wouldn't move him, would they? I think it'd be more like Jabari Smith. I'm not even sure you could get them to part with Amen Thompson for Jaylen.
Yeah. I agree with you.
I mean, that's Amen Thompson would be at the top of my look. Şengün's amazing. I'd take him, but Amen Thompson would be at the top of my list. Ime loves him, and he's a great defender. So I think they'd be, if hypothetically we're talking about that, because I think Ime would love to have Jaylen down there. But I think they would start with Jabari Smith and Reed Shepherd and guys like that.
Right? I agree with that. I needed a string like Charlie in Always Sunny to connect all the train dots there that Dean had.
But I guarantee you, if you go back and do it, it will make sense.
It'll make sense.
Other than the Şengün thing, because I don't think they deal him.
I am with Dean. I would make that trade, by the way, for the Celtics. I don't think it's going to happen.
You do Jaylen and Derek White?
No, not Derek White. Okay. No, I'm talking about the original one that we were talking about. Jaylen Brown and other assets that you would do for I just think when you're talking about an MVP caliber player, that's a different category than what you're talking about with the Jaylen Brown. So.
I completely agree, but I also think you have to factor in, and this is what again, it's not in a vacuum, just who's the better player, because we've seen this happen in the NBA. It's like, oh, look at Phoenix. Now it's Durant, Booker, and Beal. They're going to crush. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
So we've seen this where if the chemistry isn't right, even though you have a ton of talent, that could be an issue.
I just think it would work really well with what Joe Mazzulla tries to do when you have just surround him with a bunch of shooters and Jason Tatum, and that's a lot of space for him to work and operate and get downhill and get to the basket. I just think that combination right there would lead to a lot of success.
How do you know they wouldn't try and turn Giannis into a stretch four?
That would be my big fear. I can't imagine you're going to have a guy that shoots, I think, like 27% career from three-point lane.
Giannis, stand over there. Yeah, exactly. Jason will pass it to you, and you can just jack up these threes.
That would be the nightmare scenario, no question. 617-779-0985. I promise we will close out the Sports Hub Celtics show with the rest of your phone calls next.
You're listening to the 98.5 The Sports Hub Celtics show. You want to talk Boston Celtics? This is where you do it. The Sports Hub Celtics show on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
All right, back here, Sports Hub Celtics show. It's McCone, Gasper, B-Rob, and you. Thanks for holding on. Appreciate it. Let's try to rifle through as many of these phone calls as we can. John is in Dedham, wants to talk Celtics. What's up, John?
Hey, guys. Just wanted to call in to just continue the conversation about, see if you guys can comment on what you think about Jaylen Brown's development and Joe Mazzulla's development so far this season. I feel like if you listen to the midday show, you really don't get a good analysis of, the type of improvement that we've seen from both guys so far this season. So just wonder if you can comment on that, see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with Jaylen. I think that he's given you everything you really could expect from him in a number one role, averaging 29 points per game, shooting basically 50% from the field. And he's giving you the leadership. The turnover numbers are high. They're higher than they should be. But if you look at guys with high usage rates, and I think going into last night he had the third highest usage rate in the NBA, they do tend to have high turnover numbers. And the Celtics as a team, despite Jaylen's turnovers, correct me if I'm wrong, B-Rob, but I think they're last in the league. And when they have the fewest turnovers per game.
Correct.
Right now in the NBA. So it's whatever he's doing from a turnover standpoint, it's not killing the team. I don't really think you could have expected much more from him or asked much more from him at this point. I think Joe's done a really good job of finding roles for guys, finding rotations that work, finding combinations that work. I think out of anybody this year, Joe had the toughest job in terms of you had pretty set rotations before, and now they're all gone. And you have a lot of guys that are kind of similar. They're undefined in the NBA and maybe are wings with some defensive potential. It's Ugo, it's Josh Minot, it's Jordan Walsh, and he's done that. That's good. The 3-point attempts have come down, so I like that. It's still, I went back and looked at it now, updating it since the game against the Utah Jazz, where they were 11-51. They're attempting the fifth most threes in the league. Excuse me. They're just over 40 per game since that time. I still think, though, he's a little slow to react in certain games to situations. Once he makes up his mind, it's like they're doing something, they're doing it, i.e. the Cade Cunningham fouls to not allow a three. It was really close the first time to him almost drawing a shooting foul, and then the second time it happened, and I don't love what he's doing with Simons. So overall, I would say I think Joe's done a really good job, but there's still some other stuff I look at and say, you really can't find more time or a better role for Simons? I don't know. That's just me.
I think he's been good so far this year. I go back to quickly, I want to go to and I meant to do this earlier when we were talking about sort of the player development when it comes to the Boston Celtics. I also think a lot of that is the player evaluation that Brad Stevens has done and finding players. And I have to think that this goes back to the Butler days and having to recruit players that are under-recruited, but finding people that maybe have some undervalued skill sets that you think can ultimately become impact players based on the things that they're capable of doing. And I think that the evaluation of some of these players that he's brought into the organization goes a lot further than necessarily the improvement in the development that we're talking about as well. I think finding guys that might be diamonds in the rough in terms of, hey, you know what, they are not your typical rotation player when we evaluate them, or when they're getting evaluated coming into the league, or the way that they're viewed across the rest of the league. But we see a couple skills that this person kind of excels at, that we ultimately think if we give them minutes and put them in the right position, they can be contributors to the Celtics. I don't know if you guys buy that or not, but that's sort of my feeling when it comes to some of these lesser known players that have come into the organization under Brad Stevens.
They've had a lot of hits there, like going back to Hauser, Cornette. I think you have a few this year, like Gonzalez right now. If they did a redraft, he probably goes in the top 15 of the draft.
Wow, really? That high, huh?
I think so. I just actually looked at it the other day, and I'm like, easily goes 10 above. He's done a lot more than probably 15 other guys in the first round already. And so you look at that stuff, that's a big deal. And so without a doubt, that's a big part of the equation here, is finding the right guys that fit next to Tatum, next to Brown for the future here when you're running it back fully next year. And I don't know, guy. I mean, I'll throw this to you right now, Chris. Like,
yeah,
is the trajectory of how this team is playing right now, is that changing how you're approaching this trade deadline going forward? Like, if you get a viable backup center now on this roster, and with the potential of Tatum coming back in the state of the Eastern Conference, like, do you start making moves for now in the future, like already, as opposed to waiting for the offseason?
No, that makes sense. And I think especially if you do have a piece like that doesn't really fit, that's an expiring contract and makes $26 million, like Simons, maybe that's a guy that you can then peel off there and try and get something that can help you longer term and is more of a roster fit. That would definitely make some sense if you could make that work.
Anthony in Natick has been hanging on for a while. Anthony, what do you got?
Hey, it's a treat to have you on here, McCone, on Saturday.
Oh, I appreciate that.
You got it, man. Hey, Chris, it's funny. I know you were messing around with talking about the efficiency numbers. I didn't know about those with Brown over Tatum, but I'm a huge Jason Tatum guy, but, I'm Tatum over Brown. I think the eye test for that. But I'll tell you this. I'm refreshed, man. I watch a lot of basketball, and I really kind of hope Jason Tatum's on the bench right now watching what Jaylen Brown's doing, how he's using a mixture of inside and outside game and penetration, and maybe seeing that, hey, maybe I shouldn't be jacking up so many three-pointers, because we certainly know Jason Tatum can do anything he wants on a basketball court. It's just going to be what he chooses to do. But the last thing I'll say is, let's be honest, Jason Tatum's never been asked to do what Brown is doing right now. I think he could, but with this bad of a cast and what Jaylen Brown's doing, he should be getting more credit than he is. Have a good night. Have a good day, guys.
I agree. Thank you so much for that call. I agree with you with pretty much everything you said there. And I think that last point is one that is pertinent. I agree. Tatum absolutely could do this with this, but he's never been asked to do it. Tatum, for most of his career, and this is not taking away from him, because, again, he can do anything he wants on the basketball. He's a top 5 player in the league, and he's better than Jaylen Brown. I'm not debating that. But the reality is, during his time here when he's played, even in the early days, the roster was pretty good. But since he ascended to where he's at, he's always had Jaylen Brown next to him, with the exception of 2021 down the stretch when Jaylen Brown had the wrist injury. And then the team had a losing record during that stretch of games without Jaylen Brown. And even when JT was amazing and dropped 50-plus points against the Nets, they were out in 5 games. So that's just some of the context. That's not a knock on Tatum. That's just kind of some of the context for what I've been talking about all season long in terms of it's not really about Jaylen Brown. I think he's established what he's going to bring to the team. The ceiling of this team is going to be defined by the development and growth of the other guys. Because we talked about Giannis, right? Giannis is great. He's an all-NBA player. He's an MVP guy. The Bucks are 9-8 this year with Giannis in the lineup. Is that Giannis's fault? No. And so what people do is they go to the cliche of like, well, if you're the best player, you should make guys better. Yeah, there's a limit to that, though. Again, 2022, Nikola Jokic won the MVP that year, right? But Jamal Murray's out. There's only one other player on that team that averaged 15 points per game. It was Aaron Gordon. They did win 48 games. They were the 6th seed in the West, and it wasn't like your typical loaded West. The top 2 seeds were Memphis and Phoenix. The 3rd seed was Golden State, which ended up winning